This happened last summer, just after I lost a close friend in a motorcycle accident. I had just moved to this peaceful neighborhood, thinking I'd find some sort of solace. My apartment was nice enough, with a view of the park. I thought it was going to be quiet and calming. I've never stopped thinking about how quickly that changed. On my second night, I went grocery shopping. When I returned, my heart sank. The door was slightly ajar. I could have sworn I'd locked it. Maybe I forgot? I shrugged it off, feeling a little foolish. I stepped inside, and a chill ran down my spine. It felt wrong. I brushed it off. In the days that followed, I can't say I felt safe. I would find things in my apartment out of place. A mug moved from the counter. My laptop switched off when I was sure I'd left it on. I shook my head, saying I was just forgetful or stressed from the move. But that feeling of being watched wouldn't leave. One evening, I noticed muddy footprints on the floor leading up to my window. My stomach churned. I hadn't been outside, and the only way those prints got there was if someone had come inside. I took a deep breath, convincing myself it was just some prankster kids. But every night, I felt that same cold stare on my back. Around midnight, I heard something. Maybe a faint creaking? I wasn't sure, but it was enough to get my heart racing. I glanced around, every creak making me tense up. I figured it had to be the old building settling, right? But still, I paused, listening hard. I stepped towards my window and looked out into the dark. Nothing but shadows staring back at me. Then a movement caught my eye. A figure stood near the park, almost lost in the trees. I squinted. Was someone there? I took a step back, my heart pounding harder in my chest. What if it was just a trick of the light? I couldn't be sure. I told myself I must have imagined it. The next day, I told myself I'd be more careful. I secured the window, locked all the doors. But when I returned home, my window was wide open again. And outside, there were more muddy prints, one set leading away into the woods behind the park. The unease went deeper than that. I felt it every time I stepped inside my apartment, like something was just waiting for me. Sometimes I heard whispers, just faint enough that I could hardly catch the words. But I kept thinking, maybe I was losing my grip. Maybe it was all in my head. Then, one night, as I lay in bed, I thought I heard the front door creak open. I sat up, listening. I waited for a sound, anything. Then I heard a whisper, "Luke?" I turned around, and I was alone. The next morning, I felt exhausted. I hadn't slept much. The whisper still echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I decided to take a walk in the park. Maybe some fresh air would help clear my thoughts. As I strolled along the path, I spotted an older man sitting on a bench. He seemed to be watching me. I hesitated, but my curiosity got the better of me. I approached him. "Excuse me, sir," I said. "Have you lived in this neighborhood long?" He looked up with tired eyes, then nodded slowly. "Long enough to know things aren't always what they seem," he replied cryptically. "What do you mean?" He gestured toward the trees surrounding the park. "People come and go. Some leave marks behind." He paused, his gaze shifting to the ground. "Sometimes they leave something darker." His words sent a shiver down my spine. I decided to press further. "Have you seen anything strange recently?" The man hesitated, glancing around as if afraid someone was listening. "You're not the first to notice. Just be cautious, boy. The woods have a way of hiding secrets." Something in his tone made me uneasy. I thanked him and walked away, my mind racing. I needed to investigate. Maybe there was more to the muddy prints leading into the woods. I gathered my courage and returned home to grab a flashlight. I felt silly, but driven by curiosity. Once I was ready, I stepped outside and followed the prints. They led me deeper into the trees, and my heart raced with every step. The sunlight faded, replaced by shadows twisting around me. Suddenly, I stumbled upon something. A small, tattered jacket snagged on a branch. I picked it up, and my stomach dropped. It wasn't just old, it belonged to a kid. I would have recognized that style anywhere. It was my friend's brother, a kid who had gone missing last year. I felt trapped by memories and fear. This wasn't some prank anymore. The deeper I went, the more dread curled in my stomach. I started hearing whispers again, but this time they were louder, forming words I couldn't quite catch. Just then, a rapid rustle echoed from the bushes nearby. My heart stopped. I raised my flashlight, chest pounding, hoping to shed light on whatever was hiding in the dark. But nothing was there. It was silent again, but I felt it, the weight of presence, as if I wasn't alone. That's when I saw it, a pair of eyes staring at me from just outside the beam of light. I froze, breath hitching in my throat. My instinct screamed to run, but I was rooted in place. Then, as quickly as I had spotted the figure, it vanished into the trees. I fumbled for my phone to call for help, but the screen cracked. I realized then I wasn't safe. I had to get out of there fast. I turned to head back, but the path I'd taken seemed different now. The trees loomed, and every rustle made my panic swell. I strained to remember how to navigate the thickening shadows. Just as I thought I'd found the right direction, I heard it again. A whisper, closer this time. "Luke." I bolted. I dashed through the underbrush, branches scraping against my arms. Fear propelled my legs, but no matter how fast I ran, the weight of the whispering kept close on my heels. Luke. My name echoed between the trees. Suddenly, I tripped over a root and went sprawling onto the forest floor. My flashlight skittered away, hitting the ground with a dull thud, the wide beam illuminating nothing but the thick shadow of trunks and leaves. I scrambled to my feet and grabbed the flashlight, but the darkness felt thicker now, as if it were alive. Just before I turned to run again, I spotted something glimmering on the ground. I bent down, brushing dirt away with trembling hands. It was a small necklace, silver, with a delicate charm shaped like a crescent moon. My heart sank. I had seen this necklace before, worn by the same kid who had gone missing last year. This was his sister's. Panic surged, and I could almost hear the whisper swirling more frantically around me as I slipped the necklace into my pocket. There were too many questions. How was it here? What did it all mean? My instinct screamed for me to run, but my feet felt heavy. The whispers morphed into a chorus of voices, unintelligible yet urgent, rising in intensity. "Luke, you need to help!" I wanted to yell back, to demand help myself, but I couldn't find the voice. Instead, I turned and bolted deeper into the woods. Every snap of a twig underfoot felt like it would give away my position to whatever was lurking just beyond the light. Then I heard it again, a sound that pierced through the whispers. Laughter, childlike and wicked. It echoed around me, bouncing off trees, enveloping me in an atmosphere of dread. Sweat rolled down my face. I was lost, and I had no idea how much more there was to discover in this suffocating darkness. Just as I reached a clearing, I noticed an old wooden signpost nearby, half buried in the undergrowth. Through the dim light, I could just make out the words, "Dead Man's Hollow." A chill crept through me. I remembered hearing local legends about this place, stories about lost kids and things that watched from the shadows. My heart raced, and I felt like I might faint. I couldn't linger here. I needed to escape. But as I turned to leave, the laughter returned, louder now, echoing in front of me, taunting me. A shadow flickered between the trees, but I didn't want to see it. A part of me wanted to call out for help, yet another part of me was terrified of what might answer. That's when I felt it. Cold fingers brushed against my neck. My breath caught. I spun around. swinging the flashlight in front of me, but no one was there. The air felt charged, like the calm before a storm. Then everything went completely silent, the laughter gone, the whispers vanished. I waited for something to happen. The tension was almost unbearable. I took a hesitant step back, heart pounding. That's when I saw it, a faint light flickering through the trees just ahead. It was different, inviting. My instincts battled within me. I shouldn't go closer, but I couldn't turn back. As I moved toward the light, something rustled behind me. I glanced over my shoulder, but nothing was there. I was being drawn deeper into the woods, and it didn't feel safe. I had to find out what was waiting for me at the flickering light, but a sinking feeling told me the answers might be worse than I imagined. The flickering light danced like a flame, urging me forward. Each step felt heavy, but the fear of staying still was worse. My breath quickened as the darkness pressed in around me, casting everything in a cloak of uncertainty. I moved cautiously, the underbrush crackling beneath my feet. What was this light? Hope played a cruel trick on my mind. It felt too good to be true, like bait. But as I got closer, the whispering began to rise again, swirling around me, louder than before. Luke. It wrapped around my name, tugging at me like a lost kite in a storm. I broke free of the trees and stumbled into the clearing, where the light originated. My heart sank as reality set in. It wasn't a warm, welcoming light. It came from a circle of stones, a makeshift campfire that had long been abandoned. The flames flickered weakly, casting shadows that twisted unnaturally across the ground. And there, scattered near the embers, were remnants of toys, broken dolls, a tiny bicycle, and a stuffed bear missing an eye. My pulse quickened. This was not just any campsite. It felt like a graveyard for lost childhoods. A chill ran down my spine. How many kids had come here, lured by the glow? As I looked closer, something behind the fire caught my eye. A blackened piece of paper lay on the ground, edges singed. My instincts screamed at me not to touch it, but I couldn't resist. I picked it up, revealing a drawing. Children holding hands, and in the center, a dark figure with hollow eyes and a wide grin. Something rustled behind me again. Panic surged, and I turned quickly, scanning the trees. No one was there. The laughter returned, this time an echoing cacophony of distorted giggles echoing off the stones. My heart raced as I sensed movement in the shadows, but I couldn't pinpoint it. "Please, leave me alone," I shouted into the suffocating darkness, my voice trembling. All I got in return was dead silence. It felt like a trap. Then I heard it, a small voice, fragile and wistful. "Help us, help us." It was coming from the shadows. The whispers grew louder, as if the very trees were leaning in, demanding my attention. I stumbled backward, clutching the drawing tightly. I was in too deep, trapped in a web I did not understand. Every instinct told me to run, but I was frozen in place, caught between the voices and the ever-present threat of the darkness. And then the ground shook beneath my feet. A hollow thud echoed as something massive shifted in the shadows behind the trees. My blood ran cold. The figure was real, and it was coming closer. "Luke," the voice called again, but this time it was different. It sounded closer, more desperate, like someone I once knew. I turned to run, but before I could take a single step, the ancient trees loomed large and impossibly close, blocking my escape. My flashlight flickered, dimming, and all at once the laughter stopped. All that remained was the heavy silence, thick and oppressive, as I faced whatever it was that had just revealed itself in the darkness. There was no turning back now. The nightmare had only just begun. The silence suffocated me, pressing against my ears like a vice. I squinted into the night, trying to pierce the blackness that surrounded me. The bared branches seemed to reach for me, twisting in strange shapes. The air was thick with a mingling of dread and anticipation. I could almost feel it observing me, the figure lurking just beyond the light's grasp. Then I noticed something else, a soft rustling, different from before. It was low and deliberate, not the wild wind or careless wildlife. My heartbeat reverberated in my ears as I strained to make sense of it. Was it another child or something worse? I inched closer to the dying fire, hoping to chase off the shadows with its meager light. The broken toys remained where I'd first seen them, collecting dust and memories. Yet there was something about the stuffed bear that caught my attention. With its single eye, it seemed to follow me, a witness to whatever darkness lurked beyond. As I turned to face the sound, I caught a glimpse of movement, something darting between the trees. It felt too quick, too fluid to be human. Panic rose again, and I called out, "Who's there?" My voice trembled, echoing into the void of the woods. I regretted it immediately. Silence fell even more heavily around me after I spoke. Then the whisper returned, "Help us!" The urgency had shifted to desperation, but I noticed the voice was now layered, as if a chorus of children had merged into one fearful plea. My heart raced with anxiety. "Stick to reason, Luke," I told myself. "This can't be real." But a deep sense of dread gnawed at me. The drawing in my hand burned like a brand against my skin. I stared at it, that dark figure in the center. Something about its grin went beyond malevolence. It felt like
an invitation of sorts, beckoning me in. My flashlight flickered again. I squeezed it tighter, focusing on the shaky beam. As shadows shifted, I caught a glimpse of dull reflectiveness deep within the trees. Was it eyes? No, it couldn't be. Terror washed over me, and I stepped back, feeling the warmth of the fire start to wane. I needed answers, but all I had was the sound of my own deteriorating courage. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A shadow bolted toward me, darting between the stones of the campfire. "Luke, help us!" It was the voice again, but now a form dared to emerge. Small, juvenile, yet unmistakably human. I squinted, my breath caught in my throat. Sure enough, there stood a child, shivering and thin, face smeared with dirt and fear. I opened my mouth to speak, but the moment stretched. Then the child turned, revealing a melted expression, one of both hope and dread. Behind them, shadows thrummed with anticipation. The ground shook again, but this time it wasn't just me rattled. It felt like the very world was urging me forward. I had to choose. Would I stay and confront what was coming, or would I run from the harrowing stranger before me? The decision clawed at me as I teetered on the brink of dread and determination. Just as I opened my mouth to ask the child what awaited, darkness enveloped the clearing. The fire snuffed out, and an unnatural chill swept through the air. And then, everything went dark. I don't know how long I stood in the dark. It was complete and unnerving. My heart was racing, each beat loud in my ears. I tried to move, to find the child, but I couldn't tell which way was which. The overwhelming silence pressed down on me, heavy and thick. Then, like a spark igniting in the void, a light flickered in the distance. It was dim, barely there, but it pulsed like a heartbeat. I hesitated. Should I follow it? The urge to flee was strong, but the memory of the child kept me rooted. I took a step toward the light, then another, my breath coming faster. The beam grew brighter as I approached, revealing patches of ground sprinkled with scattered leaves and twigs. I noticed a faint outline forming. It was him, the child. "Please," he whispered again, his voice threadbare and trembling. "You need to help us." "Help you?" I asked, my voice a cracked whisper. It felt foolish, like calling for a lifeline in a storm. "What do you need? Where are we?" The child pointed, but the direction of his finger was obscured in the deep shadows. "They're scared, so scared. You have to come with me." Just as I opened my mouth to respond, that familiar rustling sound returned, snapping branches and the low shuffling of something moving nearby. My skin prickled with apprehension. I glanced over my shoulder, but the darkness swallowed whatever lurked there. "Run!"
the child urged, his eyes wide. I spun back to him, the urgency flooding my thoughts. And then I noticed something behind him, a form shifting in the trees, black and unsettling. "Run!" I echoed, as if saying it could break the spell of fear wrapping around me. He didn't need telling twice. We sprinted toward the flickering light together, weaving through the underbrush, the chill of the night battling against the heat of adrenaline. The trees began to open up, and as we burst into a small clearing, I spotted a dilapidated cabin, its door ajar and inviting. "In there, quickly!" I shouted. My instincts screamed that it was both a refuge and a trap. We dashed inside, the air musty and stale. I paused for a moment, locking the door behind us, my chest heaving. The faint glow illuminated the decay around us. There were remnants of old furniture, faded photos hanging crooked on the walls. A family once lived here. "Why are you here?" I asked, turning to the child who trembled beside me. "What happened?" He trembled, eyes darting around the room as if expecting something to leap out from the shadows. "They took him, and the others," he whispered. "Who?" I asked, feeling dread coil in my stomach. Then the door rattled violently. A sense of foreboding surged through me as I pressed my back against the worn wood. "You have to be quiet," the child murmured, his face draining of color. I could hear it now, the whispers, the same layered chorus I had heard before. "Help us! Help us!" It came from all directions, wrapping around the cabin like vines closing in. "Don't make a sound," I breathed as the handle shook again. Then the door broke open, splintering wood flying into the room, and silhouettes blurred in the doorway, blocking out the faint light behind them. That's when I saw it. The monstrous figure stood just outside, and I realized with horror it wasn't alone. I felt a wave of panic pour over me. The silhouettes were shifting, merging, and forming into something grotesque. They moved like shadows stretching across the light, their features indistinct but menacing. I barely registered the child's hand gripping mine tightly. "What are we going to do?" I whispered, my throat dry. The child looked up at me, his eyes wide, glinting with something that resembled hope. "We need to find a way to stop them. They're not just here for us." Before I could ask what he meant, one of the figures lurched forward, stepping into the flickering light. It wore a twisted smile, elongated and wrong, twisting my insides with dread. From behind it, others followed, their forms almost fluid, as if they were made of shadows themselves. Each face bore a look of anguish mixed with malice. I could see it now. This was not an ordinary home invasion. They were something else, something that shouldn't exist. "Get back!" I shouted, trying to sound strong, but my voice cracked. I backed away, pulling the child with me, feeling the rough wooden walls pressing against my back. The first figure spoke, its voice a garbled mess of the whispers I had heard. "They're waiting. They want to be free." "What do you mean, free?" I asked, clutching the child's hand tighter. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to flee, but there was nowhere to go. "They're trapped. We need to help them," the boy said, his voice steady despite the chaos around us. "We have to help them find peace." "Help them?" My heart raced again. "No, they want to hurt you." The figures seemed to lose their form, flickering like a broken television before gathering their shapes once more. I felt trapped, caught in a swirling storm of confusion and fear. I could see their eyes watching us, filled with a desperate longing and something more sinister. Then a loud crash sounded from the back of the cabin, startling me. Something had broken through the window, a rustling movement. I turned just in time to see more figures spilling into the room, drawn by the noise, their hollow eyes boring into me, hungry and unnatural.
"We can trick them," the child said, his voice tinged with desperation. "If we act fast, we can distract them while we look for a way out." The child's bravery forced me to act. "Okay," I said, glancing around for anything I could use. I spotted an old lantern on a nearby shelf. I reached for it, my hands shaking. "We can use this." I looked back at the door, bracing myself. "On 3, we throw it at the monsters. Ready?" I saw the child nod, terrified but resolute. 1, 2, but before I could say 3, the shadows surged forward. They were closing in fast, glimmering teeth and claw-like fingers reaching for us. I threw the lantern with all my strength. The glass shattered, flames erupting in a burst of light and heat, momentarily illuminating the faces of the shadows with their twisted expressions. For a second, everything froze. Then chaos erupted as the fire spread and the figures wailed, their cries resonating in the small cabin. "Now, run!" I shouted, grabbing the child and pulling him toward the opposite door, praying there was a way out. But as I reached for the doorknob, I realized it was locked from the outside. The kid's wide eyes mirrored my own fear. The door was locked, and we were trapped. I pulled and pushed on the knob, frantically rattling it. I knew we had only seconds before the flames would reach us, trapping us in here with the monsters. "Can you break it?" the child asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know. It's locked tight," I replied, panic threading through my voice. I stepped back, desperately scanning for another option. The flames roared behind us, as if fueling the figure's rage. They recoiled from the heat, but quickly gathered themselves again, their eyes narrowing. "Look!" the boy shouted, pointing to the window on the opposite side. My heart thudded in my chest as I followed his gaze. It was still intact, but perhaps we could break it. "Help me," I said, lunging toward the nearest chair. I barely noticed the splinters pricking my palms as I picked it up and ran back to the window. The flames flickered around us, light and shadow dancing. I threw the chair at the glass, cringing as it shattered, shards flying everywhere. I grabbed the child, ready to push him through. "Go, jump out," I urged, trying to sound confident. He hesitated, looking back at the figures closing in. "What about you?" "Just go," I roared, fear making my throat tight. He scrambled through the opening, a headlong leap into the unknown. As he landed, I turned back to the chaos. The flames were swallowing the cabin, filling the air with smoke. The shadows began to flicker again, more frantic now, caught in the blaze yet still relentless. I took a deep breath and prepared to follow him, inching toward the window. In that moment, one of the figures lunged, its twisted grin inches from my face, distorted by the flames. I felt a rush of cold terror. I dove through the window, shards cutting my arms, but adrenaline coursed through me. I landed hard on the ground outside, the grass damp under my hands. "Get up," I heard the child yell, tears of fear on his face. But I couldn't move. I just stared at the burning cabin, unable to comprehend that we had escaped. The figures, still screeching inside, flickered and twisted, even as the flames consumed them. "Are they gone?" the child asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know." I sat up, wincing at the pain, but forcing myself to look back. The fire crackled, and the figures' screams faded into the distance. Then everything went dark around us. The sunlight was snuffed out as a shadow fell, larger than the figures we had just encountered. I froze, recalling the feeling of despair in their eyes and the promise they held. "Look out!" the child screamed as the shadow loomed closer. I turned, and my heart sank. It was a figure emerging from the forest, more massive and solid than the others. It moved with purpose, and I felt the air grow heavy around it. "Run!" I shouted, pulling the child up to his feet. But the darkness spread behind us, faster than I ever could. We sprinted into the trees, the sounds of the forest muffled by the thunderous heart of whatever hunted us. I could feel it gaining on us, the weight of fear reaching into my chest. That's when I saw it, the outline of a road ahead, far in the distance. But as we dashed toward it, the darkness followed close behind, a suffocating void, threatening to swallow us both whole. As we raced through the thick underbrush, I pushed myself to move faster. I could hear the crackling of leaves and branches snapping behind us like a predator stalking its prey. The child was close on my heels, but every breath felt like a battle. My lungs burned, my heart hammered, and panic gripped my throat. "Don't look back," I shouted, forcing the words out over my ragged breaths. I had to believe that the road would be our salvation, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being hunted. The darkness was relentless. It slithered between the trees, stretching out like claws eager to grab us. I dared to glance over my shoulder, and my stomach dropped. The massive figure was closer now, its shape more defined, a gaping void that seemed to absorb all light. "Keep running," I urged the child, his small form barely keeping up. I reached out and grabbed his hand, pulling him along with me as we burst from the trees and onto the road. The asphalt felt solid beneath my feet. Relief surged through me, but it was short-lived. The shadow edged closer, skirting the trees on either side of the road. Suddenly, I spotted something ahead, a car parked haphazardly on the side of the road. I sprinted towards it, tugging the child along. "Get inside! Hurry!" I yelled, heart racing as the car came into view. He climbed in through the back seat, and I fumbled with the door, my fingers trembling. The sound of crunching leaves resumed, closer now, as I slammed the door shut. I leaned against it, panting heavily, hand on the handle, preparing to lock it. "Are we safe?" the boy asked, fear vibrating in his voice as he crouched low, peeking through the tinted window. "I don't know," I whispered. I glanced out, and my blood ran cold. The creature was now just a few feet away, standing at the edge of the tree line. Its form shimmered. It was like looking at a mirage, constantly shifting, yet somehow anchored to this world. I felt the air thicken around us as dread seeped in. I looked around the car, searching for something, anything that could help us. The driver's seat was empty, but I saw the keys dangling from the ignition. I reached for them, hands shaking. "Maybe we can drive away?" I suggested, though doubt gnawed at me. As I turned the keys over in my hand, the child's scream pierced the air. "It's coming!" I jumped into the driver's seat, my body moving on instinct. With a trembling hand, I inserted the key and turned it. The engine roared to life, a sudden burst of noise that shattered the stillness. But instead of the comforting sound of an engine, I heard a deafening thud on the side of the car. I whipped my head around, just in time to see that the creature had lunged forward, fists pounding against the metal. "Drive!" the child screams, urgency making his eyes round. I slammed the gear into drive, foot pressing down on the accelerator. As the tires screeched, I felt the car lurch forward, taking off down the road. The trees blurred past us, the shadow trailing behind, but it was still there, looming, determined. Then something in the rear view caught my eye. The child was staring back at the forest, and I followed his gaze. That was when I saw it. The dark figures emerging from the shadows, more than one. They were multiplying, pouring out like a nightmare brought to life. "Go faster!" I yelled, desperation flooding my voice. But as I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Those figures could chase us anywhere. And with every mile we put between us and the cabin, I felt the weight of questions pressing down. Who were they? What did they want? But all I could do was keep driving. I drove like I was being chased by fire itself, the engine roaring under the hood as I gunned it down the narrow road. The trees blurred past at breakneck speed. Beside me, the child held on tight, his wide eyes fixed on the horizon, but haunted by whatever we'd left behind. "Are they gone?" he whispered, clutching the back seat like it was a lifeline. I risked a glance in the rearview mirror, and my breath hitched. Shadows flitted at the edges of the trees, but none broke free into the light. For a fleeting moment, it felt like we had escaped. We were driving toward the dawn, toward safety. But that sense of safety was short-lived. The child's fear echoed in my mind, an unshakable reminder of the darkness as it settled along the edges of my thoughts. What were they? I whispered, more to myself than to him. Despite the isolating rush of the road, the taste of unease lingered. How was it possible for something so dark to exist? And, if it had, what else lurked in the shadows of this world? Just drive, the boy urged, eyes darting nervously. I pressed harder on the accelerator. Miles passed in silence, the thrum of the tires against the pavement the only sound between us. The trees grew sparser, revealing stretches of open land bathed in the early morning light. I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to ease slightly, but doubt was a shadow that never truly dissipated. "Where should I take you?" I finally asked. "Do you have a home?" He shook his head slowly. "Not anymore." The words were whispered like a memory too painful to hold on to. That sent a chill down my spine. The gravity of what had unfolded hit me like a wave, forcing me to confront the reality of our situation. The woods, the figures, and the whispers, it all felt too surreal. I had to know what I'd stumbled into. "Why were they after you?" He turned to me, haunted but resolute. "They want to collect all of us. We
Can't let them." The rasp in his voice told me his innocence had been eroded by fear, just as mine had been. "Collect you for what?" I pressed, my voice tight with uncertainty. His gaze dropped to his lap, lost in the weight of his thoughts. "To stay with them. Forever." Desperation tinged his voice, and my heart sank. I swerved, narrowly missing a pothole, and the road opened farther ahead. "They'll never get you," I promised, though I felt an unsettling knot form in my stomach. I wasn't sure if I was speaking to him or to myself. "Why did they let us go?" he asked, his brow furrowing. "They have to want something, like they're playing with us." I couldn't answer. A creeping thought wormed its way into my mind. What if we hadn't escaped at all? What if we were simply bait in a game I didn't understand? Suddenly, a figure appeared at the side of the road. I slammed the brakes, tires screeching to a halt. The child gasped, and I quickly glanced around. The morning sun glinted on something metallic, something that shouldn't have been there. My heart sank as I recognized it. A police car. A flicker of relief washed over me, but it was tinged with dread. What if this was part of their plan? As I scanned the area, the figure stepped closer into the light. It was a uniformed officer, but something felt off about the way he moved, a mechanical precision that set my nerves on end. "Please help us," I shouted, throwing the door open as the child scrambled out. "Get in," the officer commanded, his eyes locked on me with an unsettling intensity. "Where are the children?" the boy shouted, a mix of fear and anger in his voice. "Inside," the officer gestured with a slight smile. Don't listen," I yelled, feeling the weight of the nightmare closing in again. Hidden behind the facade of authority, I could sense the creature's influence lurking beneath, patient and poised, ready to snatch us back into the darkness. Without thinking, I grabbed the child's hand and bolted. We dashed past the officer, who seemed to flicker at the edges, an unnatural glitch in the fabric of reality. We didn't stop until we reached a thicket of trees, panting as we paused to catch our breath. "What was that?" the child asked, watching the road with terrified eyes. I shook my head, feeling the oppressive weight of uncertainty. "I don't know," I admitted. It was only then, as we pressed further into the woods again, that I felt it, an almost tangible pull behind us, like they were watching in the distance. I scanned the trees nervously, half expecting to see a host of figures materializing from the shadows. But there was only silence. Hours passed in uneasy conversation. We worked on evading the eyes that might still be following us. I could still faintly hear the echoes of whispers swirling somewhere close, but they transformed into quiet murmurs I couldn't quite catch. The sun continued to rise, casting pale light and warmth through the branches above us. Still, the sense of foreboding loomed, as if we were constantly being drawn back, stuck between worlds. As I finally led the child back onto another road, I caught sight of a small diner in the distance, a flickering neon sign promising warmth and safety. But as we approached, my heart sank with a sense of profound uncertainty. As we stepped closer, I casually glanced over my shoulder. The shadows seemed to shift again, undulating, as if waiting for a moment of vulnerability. Haunting laughter whispered through the air, a reminder of the darkness we had barely eluded. In that moment, standing before the diner, I realized that this wasn't over. Whatever those figures were, they were still out there, and they were patient. As I pulled open the diner door, warmth flooded over us, but it was a fleeting safety. I still didn't know if I had saved him, or if we had both walked into yet another trap. The questions loomed, unanswered and heavy, and I had a feeling they would follow us both for a long time to come. I glanced at the child, who looked back at me with a mixture of trust and fear. We crossed the threshold together, knowing the road ahead might have far more in store: light and shadow, mystery, and the forever unsettled question of salvation.